Path of Exile 2 can be a huge time sink and, in the case of early access, can also cost you money. So understandably the question arises if it's worth getting into right now. So should you play early access? On one hand, I'd like to say a massive yes, because in my opinion, PoE 2 is on track to become one of the best games ever, especially in the ARPG genre, and I've been massively enjoying it myself. But on the other hand, I wouldn't fault anyone for thinking twice about getting into it right now. So let's talk about some of the reasons why you may or may not want to buy early access. So let's get into the reasons why I think you should play the game ASAP. And the first of these is preparation for Season 1. If you're planning to go ham on release, it's gonna be a massive help to get familiar with the game, its systems, some potential builds, the items and the end game, especially if you plan to play Trade League, as being unprepared in Trade League can leave you very frustrated, as at the start of the season, the gap between the prepared players and the unprepared players in terms of currency is going to grow into a gaping chasm very, very quickly. The second reason is if you don't really have other games that you would really like to play right now that are more, well, complete. But I must say, despite its early access state, PoE 2 is already quite enjoyable, at least I have loved it so far. The factor of the cost kind of becomes irrelevant, as if you play the game for the right reasons for you, you're probably going to be playing it for a while. And purchasing the early access actually gives you an equivalent amount of store credits with which you can buy stash tabs, which are an absolute necessity if you're going to take the game even half seriously. Now, if you're new to Path of Exile, or maybe ARPGs in general, I would say if what you see from content for the game online looks even mildly interesting to you, there's a very good chance that the game is going to capture your heart. If not now, then very likely at full release. And at that point, you'll be very glad that you got a head start in getting familiar with the game. As for the arguments in favor of waiting for release, well, even though the game is quite good for early access, it is still not quite rounded out. It's missing half of its campaign story, and the endgame is, well, barren for lack of a better word. If the arguments in favor of playing the game that I mentioned earlier don't sound too compelling to you, that's probably a good sign to hold out. Another uphill battle with starting right now is that the economy is not in the best state, to put it mildly, which is no small consideration for anyone that wants to play Trade League, which is the game mode where you can sell items to and buy items from other players. Keep in mind that playing Trade League, which usually stems from the desire to get endgame stuff done quickly, will mean that you're competing via the economy against sweats who have been there from day one. I actually have a whole video discussing the topic of league choice, which I think is the most important choice a player can make, and you can find that video linked right there. Another reason the game could be a subpar experience right now is that the balancing is a bit whack. A lot of the playstyles are not fully feasible right now due to unreleased ascendancies and classes, and the aforementioned balancing. The last reason I have to not play the game right now, which could be relevant to some players, is that we're very likely to see some aggressive tuning happen in early access. So if you fall in love with a build and it gets nerfed, it might just break your heart and mean that you're not going to play the game on release. Overall, it's important to gauge what kind of player you are and which of these points will be truly impactful to you. Now, what I've compared so far are the trade-offs between playing the game right now or on release. But what about the players who are considering whether to play the game at all, like ever? Some will think that trading will make the game behave kind of like a normal game and cut out the grind, but from what I've seen, players who believe this and then play casually often get very frustrated because of how the economy is going to explode, meaning if you don't play hard, you're not going to be able to afford much in trade. So my suggestion is to just keep this in mind. If you want to play casually, but you tend to compare your progress against that of others or have some kind of requirements or expectations of yourself in terms of progress, this game might not be perfectly catered to you regardless of league choice. The people that I would highly recommend this game to are those that really want to get deep into a game and value an experience where you grind and earn progress over a large number of hours invested, because PoE 2 is one of the few games nowadays that offers this experience in a world full of instant gratification. If you decide to give Path of Exile 2 a go, and especially if you're new to Path of Exile, you won't want to miss my next video where I cover tips to make you feel like a Path of Exile pro straight out of the gate. See you there.